Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Sal Chatterbox. How you all doing? And today I was joined by a special guest, Wrestler Joe Hendry. How you doing, bro?
Hello, I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on, mate. I wanted to start off, obviously, with who you are. Obviously, you're a wrestler from Scotland.
Yep.
How did it all start for you, and who were your influences growing up?
So I actually got into wrestling pretty late. I didn't have cable TV, so I didn't see WWF back in the day, and I very occasionally caught WCW because Cartoon Network used to change into Nitro. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah.
Channel 22, I remember it. But I only really got like super addicted to wrestling when I was like sort of 13, 14 maybe. So it was a little later than most, but it was The Rock for me. The Rock was the guy that got me into the business. That I think when I started off, I kind of discovered wrestling properly through the video games, but I started becoming like a fan of The Rock more than wrestling. And then when I got to sort of 14, 15, I started watching the wrestling channel, watching shows like Ring of Honor, who I'm with now, a bunch of others as well. And then, yeah, just kind of, I thought it was like an impossible goal. Like I didn't realize that if you go to the gym and eat, an insane amount of calories, you could change your body, because I used to be quite a skinny guy. So I just thought wrestling wasn't possible. So I thought, well, I'll do the second best thing. I went and did music. I did that for a long time, just didn't quite happen. But when I got into wrestling, I took the skills I learned from music and became like the musician wrestler, which formed my gimmick. So it all kind of came full circle. Also, when I was younger, I'd done judo and stuff like that, which helped me take to pro wrestling really quickly. So it just felt like everything that I'd done up to that point subconsciously led me to prepare me for wrestling.
Yeah, was there obviously you mentioned The Rock. Was he the main influence for you growing up to become a wrestler? He was the one guy that you looked to, you aspired to be.
Oh, 100%. I mean, The Rock is, in my opinion, the I think he's the best ever, the best of all time. I have been rather fortunate, though, I will say, in that a fan asked me, "Who's your dream match?" And I was thinking, well, if it was a program, like you could work with him over a series of months and you would build to a pay-per-view, it would be The Rock. But when they asked me a one-on-one match, what would be your dream just one-off match? I said Kurt Angle, and then I tagged him. Kurt Angle gets back to me. We chat back and forth. A couple of years, actually 1 year later, we're wrestling each other in the main event of a pay-per-view. So that was pretty cool too.
How was that? How's Kurt Angle as a person? Obviously, for him to respond to a DM, it says a lot about him as a person. To respond to up and coming aspiring wrestlers. How was he as a person? I mean, obviously you wrestled him. And do you see a rematch in the future?
Well, actually, it was Kurt that DM'd me, because I just tagged him on Twitter, and he DM'd me and he basically says, "Look, I know who you are. Keep up the hard work. You're not ready yet, but keep up the hard work, and maybe the match will happen." And it didn't seem likely, because at the time he was signed to Impact, and he was only independent for a very short space of time. And I think he wrestled Rey Mysterio on Fight TV. He wrestled Joe Coffey. He wrestled Zack Sabre Jr., and then he wrestled me. And he wrestled Cody Rhodes as well. But I think that might have been it. I think so. I was one of those handful of people that got to wrestle Kurt on the Indies, and obviously, I assume, or I don't know, I'm sure. Well, I know Rey Mysterio would have wrestled him before, but yeah. So there's really only a handful of people who got to wrestle him on the Indies, so I was very grateful for that. Kurt is you'll often find this in pro wrestling, that the people at the very top tend to be very helpful, very sort of happy to give advice. There's mentorship there. There's a lot of good qualities, because I feel that people who get to the very top, there isn't that sort of competition. It's often the dramas take place with people who are maybe just one level or two above you. Once they're way up there, I tend to find that people at the very top tend to be extremely nice, and Kurt is just the greatest. Kurt was number one concern was, what can I do to help your career, is what he was saying to me. So Kurt definitely put me on the map as a wrestler. So that was awesome, and I'll forever be grateful for that.
Yeah, he's an absolute legend. Obviously, he's one of the greatest of all time. in my opinion, especially growing up watching wrestling. I mean, it's his personality. He can do everything as well.
Yeah.
He weren't just a wrestler. You know, he was good on the mic as well. He was versatile. You know, and he went through different stages as well.
Yeah.
So
Kurt's the most versatile performer of all time, in my opinion, because he can go from being, 100% believable, just wrestling machine, to a total goofball drinking milk in the next scene. You know what I mean? He could do everything. He was a 10 in every area. Like, it's funny when you go to the video games, and I remember they used to give ratings to people, and well, he's got a 10 for power, and he's got a 10 for technique, he's got a 10 for charisma. It's really difficult not to give Kurt 10 for everything, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. You also appeared on WWE Raw as well. How was that? You was a Rosebud, of course. And do you think that storyline, it sort of got drifted out, didn't it, a bit early? Do you think that could have carried on, that storyline?
Well, I mean, I think the Rosebuds thing was a laugh. It was a lot of fun. It was like there's a lot of people who have gone on to do great things who have been Rosebuds. So it was. I think most people look back on it fondly. So it was that. Yeah, that was my first time on TV for WWE, and then I became Rusev's lawyer for an episode as well, which was an interesting situation, because if you think about it, I was only in the business. I started training in 2013, and in 2015 I'm on TV cutting a 2-minute promo for Rusev, and it's just very rare that an extra gets that opportunity. So I felt like it was a lot of there's a lot of pressure on my shoulders, but I'm proud of how I handled it. It was a lot of pressure, but I'm proud of how I handled it, and I did my best. I gave it my best, and it's interesting. I don't know if I've ever discussed this in an interview, but I actually got feedback from Vince McMahon. I didn't know he was watching the promo, but when we were talking about it earlier in the day, and the agent came up and he says, "Yeah, Vince has got some feedback for you." So that was incredible to have Vince McMahon watch one of your promos and give you feedback.
What do you feel are the glaring differences between the US wrestling and the UK wrestling? Do you think the UK is catching up with the US wrestling? Do you see a future? Where do you see it in 5 to 10 years, for example? The UK, do you see it getting on par with US wrestling?
Well, I mean, I think the thing with at many times in the past decade, I would say there's years that you can pick out where the UK has had the hottest wrestling scene in the world. Everyone was wanting to come over to the UK for a long time. It had the hottest scene. And I think what you'll see now is rather than having regions, so for example, a British wrestling scene, so you'll notice now there's they've got there's various UK, there's NXT UK, for example. So a lot of these companies are branching out to these areas. Like, obviously, I mean, when I was with Impact, we did shows in the UK. Now I'm with Ring of Honor, we did shows in the UK. So what I think is going to happen is, I don't think it's going to be necessarily like a British scene or a Canadian scene or an American scene like it maybe was in the past. I think what you're going to see now is different styles of wrestling. So, for example, the company I work for, Ring of Honor, is a very sports-driven product. It is all about realism, authenticity, and believability. So I think rather than region, that would just be one example. But I think then, you can contrast that with, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, which is, that is being presented in a sort of shoot fight situation. And then, you'll have sort of AEW, which is very in line with the way the indies were with it's just, if you kind of look through the different companies, I think they're all kind of going to splinter off in their different directions in the exact same way that it's happened to music and television as well. I think you'll get different genres, which will be great, because then if you like a particular genre of wrestling, you can steer into that. And I'm, very happy to be with Ring of Honor, because I've got, I've done a lot of grappling, I've done judo, I completed the Commonwealth Games in wrestling a few years ago. So I think that it'll be a real challenge for me. And it'll be exciting for me to get back to Ring of Honor when the borders can open back up and steer into that sports style and show that I can do that as well.
Yeah, how has it been for being a wrestler during this time? Obviously, unprecedented time, as they say, during COVID. Obviously, I've seen the WWE and other wrestling companies have had TV screens and things like that. I've always thought that was a good idea in regards to football. You know, they should have TV screens around the stadium or fans. How's it been during the lockdown? Have you been busy?
Well, I have been very busy, but in a different way. Like I say, we were talking about it before we went on air, kind of moving house just now. So that's kind of busy in the immediate. But I've started businesses and stuff like that. So I've kind of ventured into that side of things, but also mainly what I've been focusing on is basically being an analyst now for Ring of Honor. So every bit of content they put out, I will watch it. I've got a show called Technique Tuesdays on their YouTube, which is on a Tuesday, obviously, where what I'll do is, because we're going down this kind of sports focused direction, I'll look at the product and I'll break it down scientifically. So if you see like a power bomb, for example, I'll tell you where that might have first came from. Or if you see an arm bar, I'll explain how you would set that up from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu standpoint. So that's kind of what I've been working on right now. I've put on a lot of weight. I've put on 60 pounds since I've been in lockdown. So I'm looking to come back as a big guy. And I think it'll be interesting to see how my act changes. It's mentally, it's tough, man. Like, I don't know if you found the same, but it's just, lockdown is just, I've been all go, like, whether it was music or wrestling or whatever I was doing, I've been all go since I was 15. I've basically been touring since I was 15. So to go from that and then to finally living my dream, wrestling in America for Ring of Honor, got my visa, I remember the first time I went over for Ring of Honor, the first show I had, I was in Atlanta Center Stage, which is where Ric Flair used to defend the World Championship, the big gold belt. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is my first day and here I am. The next day, we went to this really famous wrestling venue in Nashville, and I was like, God, I'm basically getting a tour. Then shortly after, we went to the ECW arena, and I've wrestled in the ECW arena in Philadelphia. So, I was literally living my dream, getting to see all this, getting to experience all this, and then one day, honestly, this is how crazy it is. We had a show in Vegas. Me and my tag team partner, we're going to wrestle the Briscoe brothers. And I'm really feeling, my gut's telling me this is going to be our breakout match. Everything we know about COVID, it's kind of, people are talking about it in the media, but we get on the plane. While we're in the air, lockdown starts kicking in. And when the plane lands, everything's canceled, everything's shut. And we're scrambling to think, are we going to be able to get home? And this is something I want to say a huge thank you to Ring of Honor for, is not only have they been keeping me on the payroll and paying me as normal, but when I was over there in Las Vegas, they actually not only bought me one flight to get back, but they actually had to just buy me an earlier one to get me back. And they covered that. And, there's no obligation for them to do that. So very grateful. It has been tough for me mentally, like, to just not be in the mix. But I couldn't ask to have been, I've been treated unbelievably by Ring of Honor. So very thankful.
Yeah, fantastic. My first memories of wrestling was SummerSlam 1992.
Yeah.
Wembley Stadium, 90,000 people in the stadium. Unbelievable experience. When was your earliest memory of wrestling? What was your earliest memory going back?
I've got two. One of them was, I can't remember which is first. I was at my cousin's house and I didn't like wrestling, but they just loved it. And it's when Stone Cold Steve Austin was getting over. And because I'd never seen him before, I didn't really get it. So I just saw, I think it was either like Al Snow dressed up as a ninja, or it was like Conan dressed up as Max Moon. But because they looked a bit like Power Rangers, I was like, yeah, those guys are the best. So that was one of them. The other memory I had was, again, just I was watching Cartoon Network and it would turn into TNT and WCW Nitro would come on. And I remember just hating Ric Flair. Absolutely hating Ric Flair. I was like, why is this old guy always win? Like, and that was like back in the the early 90s. But then now, looking back, Ric Flair he's in my top 3 wrestlers of all time. And it's because he was just that damn good at his job, making the audience hate him.
I remember Ric Flair way back with the strawberries, Elizabeth. He's. One question I want to ask you: do you think there's an age limit? Obviously, I was asked this question before that Ric Flair was too old to be a wrestler. Do you think there is an age limit to wrestling when you should call it a day and retire? No.
Absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. I watched a documentary with Goldberg the other day. I'll tell you now, Goldberg is one of the coolest guys I've ever met in the business. Another example of a mega star right at the top. Again, so polite, so awesome. Took his time. Said, anytime you want to get advice, just email me. Coolest guy ever. And he gave me some awesome advice. And he was basically telling me about, how to like put your moves together. And I'm just thinking, this is awesome. Anyway, I got sidetracked, but Goldberg, a documentary comes out and he's 54 years old. He just had a title match with Drew McIntyre. And he said, I remember I used to like smirk at Ric Flair doing this at 39 years old. He's like, never did I think I would be doing it at 54. And the thing is, now we know so much more about nutrition, about recovery, that if you're smart, you pick your spots, you can do this for a long time. You can do this for a long time. Age is no longer the barrier that people think it is. Like, I thought I was like too old to get into wrestling, but no. DDP started his in-ring career at 35. Don't get me wrong, it'll be more difficult if you start later on, but just because something's never been done before doesn't mean that you can't do it. So if anyone's bothered about age, don't. I've got a podcast where we talk about all this stuff. It's called Wrestling University. I do it with Dr. Tom Pritchard. He actually trained Kurt Angle and The Rock, my two favorite wrestlers, which I've kind of just realized how cool that is now. But we've got a podcast where we discuss that sort of stuff if anyone's interested.
What are your thoughts on recent allegations in regards to British wrestling? Obviously, there's been a lot of controversy recently. There's this thing in a rock and roll lifestyle that they live. What are your thoughts on these allegations in regards to British wrestling from the US scene? I've seen a lot of controversy going along. Obviously with Flair, with Ric Flair, obviously with his daughter, etc. What are your thoughts on the wrestling in general, with the recent controversies that have been going on?
I don't know. What was the Ric Flair thing you were saying? I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I was talking about obviously there's wrestlers wanting to get out of their contracts. Obviously, there was the wrestler.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I can't comment on any sort of contractual situations or anything like that, and I wouldn't want to speak for anybody other than myself, and regarding all that sort of things, like, I think the what I would have to do is just say that, from like, I work for Ring of Honor, and that they've kind of put statements out on that and stuff like that. But from a personal perspective, I think what we need to focus on as an industry is just making it as kind of safe and transparent for people. There's been a lot of listening with my students, female and male, and we just need to do what we can do as an industry to make it as safe and transparent as possible for people.
Yeah, fair play. Well said. What are your personal achievements? Obviously, you've done a lot. You've wrestled Kurt Angle. Apart from that, what is your personal biggest achievements in wrestling thus far?
I think, so I opened up the Hydro to 6,000 people at what at the time was the biggest independent wrestling show ever. So that was really cool. Did one of my custom entrances for that. It was a great experience. I started, so like I said, I did a bit of judo when I was younger, but I got into amateur wrestling at age 27 after I'd done pro wrestling, because I thought, people aren't taking me seriously enough as a pro wrestler. So I'll go and prove that I can go and do freestyle wrestling. So I became a 2-time amateur wrestling British champion in both freestyle and Greco. I represented Scotland at the Commonwealth Games. That was a big thing for me. Like you say, wrestled Kurt Angle. That was pretty big. I got awarded. I had it the plaque near me, but it's I was awarded like the British Wrestler of the Year in 2017 from all the old veterans, like Marty Jones and Johnny Saint, and the old kind of classic wrestlers. So that really meant a lot. Signing with, so I guess it's, you've got the Kurt and the Hydra was 2016. That award I got in 2017. I did the Commonwealth Games in 2018. And I got signed to Ring of Honor in 2019. That was huge for me. And I got to wrestle all over America, even though it was short lived. It wasn't a particularly long period of time, but that I got to live my dream. But I'm hoping to get back ASAP. But like I say, getting signed to a major organization, that was a big thing for me. And I've got to wrestle, pretty much. I can pick, if you look at any major company, whether it's Ring of Honor, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, I look at their top, maybe not so much New Japan, but actually no, a good portion of them. I look at any of these big companies, and Impact, of course. I look at any of these big companies and I think, God, I've wrestled pretty much at least half their roster, so I've got the chance to wrestle the absolute best wrestlers in the world. So that's pretty awesome too.
Yeah, and obviously Britain has some fantastic wrestlers of the past. So you've got a British Bulldog, William Regal, and now we've got Drew McIntyre, who was recently WWE champion.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to young aspiring wrestlers from the UK if they wanted to aspire to be the next British Bulldog, the next Drew McIntyre, or the next Joe Hendry, for example?
Hopefully I'll earn the third spot in that sentence. But I think, I know Drew. I've worked with Drew a lot. And Drew's kind of helped me a lot as well. And if you know Drew, you know the work ethic that goes in. That's the main thing. People just look at this and they think, oh, I could do that. And I'll never forget, I was in Dundee and someone came up to me. He was like, have you got any wrestling jobs? And it was just like, wow, like, it's just not how it works. You gotta grind. Like with my gimmick, I'm the musician wrestler, so I do custom music videos. There'll be times where I'd have a show the next day and I'm working 20 hours straight on like my entrance video for that weekend. Like I literally started a new sport and went to the Commonwealth Games to get wrestling promoters to take me more seriously. Like I have sacrificed everything to be in this business. And I think a lot of people get into it and they don't realize that, doing 80% of the work just isn't going to cut it. Like if you even want to scratch the surface, you need to just be the hardest worker in the room, as The Rock says at all times. You have to be the hardest worker in the room. When I look at my career and think, oh, maybe when I didn't quite achieve this or quite achieve that, I have to ask myself, was it the hardest worker in the room? And here's the other thing. It's not just working hard, it's working smart. Like I'll give you some examples. Like I've done, a lot of entrances and really cool stuff and all the bells and whistles and promos and great physique and all that. But there have been times where I thought, do you know what? Maybe I should have, gone and done the wrestling camps and wrestled like 30 days in a row just to get my reps in before I debuted with this company. Or there are times when I look at how UFC fighters prepare. Again, I've trained with several UFC fighters. I know what they put in. I think, us as pro wrestlers, why shouldn't we be in the gym that often? And I don't just mean lifting weights. I mean in the gym, in like a wrestling ring, practicing your moves, practicing your techniques. So I think it's work ethic. I think if you want to, it's so competitive now. If you want to get anywhere in this business, it has to be your life. And also just know what you're getting into. Understand what you're getting into. It's this can be the best business in the world, but from stuff that we talked about earlier, it can be it can be a really tough business for a lot of people. So just understand that there are difficulties and costs and just exhaustion that comes with, and drama that come with chasing your goals. But the hope is that it is worth it, and we can build an industry where it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, like obviously any sport athlete is the best always train the hardest. They're always the last. In football, I always heard stories of Beckham was always on the last person on the pitch. He was always the one who's continued practicing their craft.
Yeah.
What do you feel was changed in wrestling over the last 20 years or so? Do you think there's a lot has changed in regards to characters. Obviously, it was a lot more hardcore back in the day. We had the Attitude Era and great wrestlers. That was a great time for me. I mean, it wasn't only wrestling. The storylines, it was hilarious sometimes. It was absolutely, I mean, obviously Triple H, Generation X. What do you feel has changed in wrestling over the last 20 years?
So, to be like versatile at a top level, you need three things. That is, you need the charisma. So that's like your promos, like your entrances, just that aura that you have, your physique, and not even just your physique, your look. So for example, you wouldn't look at Mick Foley when he was Mankind and say his physique was a 10, but his look was a 10. You know what I mean? Say, there are larger athletes where they don't need to have an insane definition, but you can still look at them and say their look is a 10. So you've got your charisma, you've got your look, and then you've got your in-ring work. What it took to be successful was in this order 20 years ago. So charisma was number 1, physique was number 2, and in-ring was last. Now, in-ring is absolutely the most important. Then I would say it's the charisma, and then I would say it's the physique down at the bottom. So that's the order is basically, totally flipped around.
Yeah, exactly. You talk about Mick Foley. If there was one dream match, another dream match, Mick Foley would be one, but I would have thought it'd be a bit dangerous. Some of the stuff that Mick Foley did.
Tough guy. Yeah, he's a tough guy.
He risked it all.
I'll tell you, I've had one. I've got several dream matches. One of them was Kurt Angle, obviously, which I've had. The Rock would be the other one. We don't know if he'll wrestle again. So but who knows? Hey, I never thought I'd wrestle Kurt Angle. You just never know. Jericho's a dream match for me as well. Cena is a dream match for me as well.
Jericho's another one here. I mean, he's got the music career as well, like yourself.
I think, yeah.
I mean, that guy, he carries on. He just keeps going. He just gets better and better year by year.
You can argue Jericho is, if we say there are certain people that can be in conversation for the greatest, and Jericho is there. He's, not only with his versatility, but he's been over from start to finish for, an insane amount of time. He's been over and at the top for a huge amount of time.
Yeah, he has. I still remember his entrance. I mean, the countdown. I was waiting for his debut. 21 years ago now. It's
that's crazy.
It was fantastic. If you were to pick a dream match, stipulation as well, and which event, which pay-per-view would be, what match would you pick? What stipulation and what pay-per-view would it be? So you're going to say WrestleMania.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I wrestle for Ring of Honor, so like the worst thing you can do is to you got to know your own company. That's where your goals have got to be. You got to get to the top of where you're at. If you start going, oh well, I want to go to this place and that place, your head's not in it. You got to have your heart and soul in it. So definitely, I mean, well, I will say. Ring of Honor for anyone that wants to check it out. We do have a pay-per-view this week, so on March 26th. And if I could have my dream and get on a plane, that would be it. It's the 19th anniversary show. So let's say the 20th anniversary show in the world title match. Let's go for a ladder match. You can't beat a good old ladder match. It's just the visual at the top of the ladder when you see someone unhook the championship. It's such a great image, and it's such a good way to end a story because it has a sense of finality to it. Because you have the whoever becomes the champion or retains the championship, they're sitting on top of the ladder. It's the visual. They've got the higher ground. They're at the top of the mountain. Their opponents are down below. There's a finality to it. So I would go with ladder match. And let's say the Ring of Honor 20th anniversary show.
Oh, that would be fantastic. But Money in the Bank. Climb the ladder, grab that briefcase. Definitely. Have you ever, obviously, you've been on WWE Raw. I was on WWE Raw. I actually handed R-Truth a cigarette once.
How did that happen?
2011. I handed him a cigarette. He had his turn turned into a bad guy, and we handed him a cigarette. He asked for a light. It was live on Raw, actually, in the UK.
Why were you there though? Were you an extra or?
No. He went crazy, and he came round the ringside, and he goes, we gave him a cigarette. We were like, have a cigarette, and he goes, you got a light? And we gave him a light, and yeah. It was crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy what happens when you're at the WWE. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. I want to talk a little bit about Triple H. Triple H, obviously a legend of wrestling. Obviously, WWE one owner now. And have you ever met the guy? And how was he in person in regards to? So I met him once. He was a very open guy, would speak to you, would give you a time of the day. And that's what I thought about wrestlers in general. They were very salt of the earth kind of people, and they would talk to you. They would give you the time of the day. Is there any particular wrestler who you've met, who you've been surprised about, who you had doubts about before, etc.?
Well, with regards to Triple H, I have met Triple H one time. And it was actually backstage at an ICW show. And I had no idea he was going to be there. And I guess this just goes to show, you should always be prepared. Now, this is the funny thing. Whenever I went to ICW, I would always dress smart. I would always be presentable. Because this was a tour, it was like, it's a tour, people expect, so I just thought, I'll just wear a t-shirt, and I'm wearing a Weezer t-shirt, and Triple H walks in. I'm like, oh God, the one day I'm not wearing a suit, So I go and I chat to him, and I just shook his hand, and definitely, I've seen him at tryouts and stuff like that. Huge presence. There's a few people that you see, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, JBL, Undertaker. There's people, Brock Lesnar. There's people that when you see them in person, you're like, whoa, they've got a presence about them. Triple H has that presence. Huge influence for me. A lot of my moveset is based on a lot of Triple H's stuff, because I always felt like he just, to me as a fan, I just looked at him and just thought, that whole, he was the game, So I remember as a kid, I would be looking in the mirror, and I'd be practicing my punches, or, when I was like 15 or something like that, or how would your suplex and like cushions on the couch and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, how would Triple H do this punch? So definitely a big influence for me, and a huge influence on the business. But with regards to someone that I was surprised by, I will say, because my gimmick is like a music based gimmick, I do songs to make fun of my opponent, and I was concerned. I thought I did one about Kurt Angle, where I made this video where I take his gold medals and I just throw them all in the bin, and I was like, oh man, like I'm hoping Kurt is okay with this. And Kurt loved it. He thought it was hilarious. So I was pleasantly surprised with that. But again, it's not so much a surprise, but just like a kind of gratefulness really for like Ring of Honor. Like when this whole COVID thing happened, they just took a stance that, we're gonna stick by the wrestlers no matter what. And like I say, this is how crazy this is. I haven't been to Ring of Honor in over a year now. The last time I was there was in Las Vegas, and the show was canceled. We taped a match with no audience, which was a really strange experience, but it was a good experience, to have done it and to know what the differences are. And but I haven't been there for a year now, and they've been paying me as normal and honored my contract. And that's the word there, honor. So I'm just very grateful, and I don't want to say surprised, but it was very reassuring as a wrestler. So very grateful for that.
Well, hopefully I'll be seeing a lot more of you in the coming months, of course. Traveling as well, live events. I used to love going to live events. Yeah, I love going to WWE live events, wrestling events in general. I've seen Wade Barrett come back recently. I saw him at a wrestling event in Surrey. Yeah, fantastic guy. Talented guy. That's one thing I was a bit disappointed as obviously you had Wade Barrett, and his character was fantastic. Obviously he had that spat with John Cena before, and it was fantastic. The storyline was brilliant.
Yeah,
I think he's a talented guy. And,
100%. He was the basically one of the agents for, it was on an independent show. There's a match I had that I'm really, really proud of when I won really important championship, and he basically helped us put that whole thing together. So I've worked with him a few times. I haven't wrestled him, but I've worked with him in like promos and stuff like that. Like he was the sort of he was the sort of commissioner type thing, and I was the bad guy. So we had some funny kind of I got told, I'm afraid I've got some bad news a few times in front of the live crowd, so that was a lot of fun. Great guy, and a fantastic guy. Credit to the business.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, I just want to wrap things up. I mean, there's many eras of wrestling that have gone before, and obviously, I come from a long background of watching wrestling. Obviously, from Papa Shango to Tatanka to all
he's a great
things.
guy as well. He is a funny guy.
Is he still in wrestling now? Is he still there? Or is he?
I was on a tour for a promotion called Fight Forever, and he was there. Yeah. So I can't remember if he was
Proper old.
I think he might have dished out a clothesline or something. I don't know if he did like a full match, but it's not afraid to get in there and dish out a few clotheslines for sure.
Yeah. Which era would you like to wrestle in? If there's one era you can pick to wrestle in, which era would it be?
It would be I would say for me, I think wrestling was in its peak sort of in ring from, I would say, 2002 to 2006 was my favorite era. Actually, you know what? Let's say 2001 to 2006. Just because I guess from the WWE perspective, you had just this insane star power of rosters. From you had you had legends like Ric Flair, Hogan, The Undertaker. You had like top talents like Ric Flair, Triple H, The Rock, Triple H, Steve Austin. But then you had like huge up and coming talent like Lesnar. But then also, this is where I really got into Ring of Honor, was watching the Wrestling Channel. So I would watch FWA, and that was like Doug Williams and Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm and guys like that. And then obviously there was TNA at the time, and there was Ring of Honor. And Ring of Honor really, like, I remember watching Ring of Honor back in, it must have been like 2003, 2004, and I think if you think about all the people that went through Ring of Honor, and I got to see on the Wrestling Channel go through this great company. You're talking about Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Seth Rollins. It's just Austin Aries, Samoa Joe, Loki. Like, you just honestly, if I read you a list of Ring of Honor champions, it's just I'm scratching the surface. But basically, if you look at the biggest names in the business, so many of them went through Ring of Honor, and I got to see that journey. And now the fact that Ring of Honor is really steering into this like sports wrestling product and kind of, touching base with their roots again, it's a really exciting time. So that's kind of, I feel like Ring of Honor at the moment, if you like that sort of the wrestling, the innovation in wrestling that was going on in that independent scene and Ring of Honor at the time, then people should watch our pay-per-view 19th anniversary show, March 26th. In the UK, it'll be midnight, March 26th. And you can watch, I believe you can watch the first hour for free. So if you just go to rhwrestling.com, go check that out. We've got an insanely stacked card. I'm going to be watching it live as well, so join me with the watch along. But that I would say that era for me was pretty special. That sort of 2002 to 2006.
Yeah, it's a good period. Who would you say currently is your favorite wrestler? I would say, and who do you think is the most underrated wrestler?
I think the most underrated wrestler in the world right now is a guy called Jonathan Gresham. He is the pure champion in Ring of Honor. Daniel Bryan just put him over the other day, just talked about him. I think that Jonathan Gresham is the best technical wrestler in the world, and a lot of people feel the same way. He's just incredible. He's probably the underrated. He's the person I like to watch, and the most underrated as well. But we've got some big stars. We've got like this weekend We've got EC3 versus Jay Briscoe. There's a guy called Danhausen that we've got who is just over like Rover at the moment. We've got, some of the absolute best talent from Mexico right now. We've got some of the best luchadors in the world. We've got Dragon Lee, we've got Flamita, we've got Rush as our champion, we've got Jay Lethal, we've got so many, and from the women's division as well, we've got Angelina Love. We've got so many. We've got up and coming talent. We've got people who are those underrated next wave of superstars, but we've got big established stars, and the product's on fire right now. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen on March 26th. So please do join me.
Oh, 100%. I'm sure I'll be going to some events as well. Hopefully I'll see you there. Definitely 100%.
Absolutely.
Where do you see yourself in 4 to 5 years? Let's say I ask every guest I have on. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Do you know, it's weird, if you'd have asked me that question in 20, I knew exactly what I was going to do and how I was going to do it when I started wrestling. I was like, I'll be here, I'll be here, I'll be here. And I've found that life kind of just, it's not always the straight line that you think it's going to be. There's a little journey here, there's a little journey there. So I'll give you an example. I've had a year, so when I did the Commonwealth Games in 2018, now that basically took a year out of my career, to go and do that. Well, and I didn't expect to do that, but then you've got to weigh it up and go, well, I got to represent my country at the Commonwealth Games and I became a 2-time British champion. So there's not a lot of pro wrestlers who have done that. So yeah, I maybe lost a bit of momentum pro wrestling wise, but I've achieved something that very few people get to do and represent their country. And then on the other hand, I look at lockdown now and it's like I've lost a year of my career. It's like, God, another year has gone from my pro wrestling career. But then again, I've started, I've co-founded several successful businesses that probably wouldn't have come till way later in life. So it's this thing, it's like, I could say, oh, I'm going to be the top guy in the business. Hey, don't get me wrong. Like that's the goal, is to be the top guy in the business. But I just understand there might be some twists and turns along the way. So right now, I'm not going to say I'm going to be the top talent in the business. My goal is in 4 to 5 years to be the absolute best. Like I know what I'm great at. I know what I need to work on, and I can go and get it done. So remember this interview.
100%. I'll be bringing it up. Definitely. Yeah. So it's a good mentality to have as well. Obviously, I've been in the music industry for 15 years. I know how hard it is to achieve an articulate dream, because that's what it is.
What is it you do in music?
I'm a music manager. My brother's an artist. He's a rapper. He's been around 15 years. We've been around the world touring. The difficulties, the competition, obviously it's
rough.
Politics, obviously it's ridiculous, And,
sounds like wrestling.
Yeah, just like wrestling. Every single industry like this, which is obviously when you make it, it's the best. Obviously, if you make it, that's it. That's you sorted. But it's a hard road. It's a long road. But if you get there, I mean, it's people like you inspire people like me to do better.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I will say, if I could give one piece of advice, one thing I do wish I'd done more is see friends more and see family more, because actually, I'm very grateful to be, well taken care of and living my dream. But actually, if you can't share it with people, then it doesn't mean anything. So, I think there's this grind culture, which is like you've got to just work all day, every day, and all that. And what I've actually come to learn is that it's actually about the quality of the time that you put in. And actually, you're going to need a few hours off here and there to recharge, and you're going to come back to things fresh. So if people are listening to this, don't be tempted to work every second of every day, because if you do that, you're going to end up in a bubble. If you're not watching the odd movie or the odd TV show or going out for a coffee, you're not going to observe what's going on around you. And whether it's a great song that connects with people, or whether it's a wrestling angle or a comedy music video like I make that connects with people, or a comedian that tells a joke, it's all observation. You need to be a member of society to see and to understand what other people are going to enjoy. And if you're just completely focused and not taking any time out, you're not going to see the forest for the trees. So my advice to people would be is just try and enjoy what's going on. Like see the stuff I was telling you about in the ECW arena. Like, looking back, I should have got a goddamn picture in front of the big ECW sign at the ECW arena, but I'm like, no, I'm working. But then, fast forward a month or two, and you can't go to work anymore. So enjoy it as you go along, but also do take some time out. Please don't go down the same route I did, because it's just not the right move mentally. Trust me on that one.
Exactly. That's the gospel. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, very enlightening. And I hope to catch up with you soon. And when the lockdown ends, I hope to be there in person, ringside. Yeah, so cheering you on.
Sounds good, man. I won't ask you for a cigarette. I don't smoke, so you won't have to experience that again. But
that was a big shot. They caught us unawares, and I had this little BlackBerry. You're talking about pictures. I had this little BlackBerry trying to record it, and yeah, it just happened all of a sudden. 2011 WWE Raw, London.
There you go. Well, congrats on your channel as well. One of the reasons I agreed to do it is because I was like, this guy is for the amount of subscribers he's got, he's getting a disproportionately high number of views, which makes me think that the channel is going to grow very quickly. So I saw your channel when you reached out, and I was like, yep, I think this guy's going to be successful. It seems to be working. So keep at it, man. It looks good.
Thanks, brother. Really appreciate that, man. I'm gonna try my best. Football's obviously it started off as a football channel, but I've drifted out, and I've interviewed other athletes from different sporting backgrounds.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe, and I shall speak to you soon, my man.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man.
Cheers, brother.
See ya.